Hello, Jardine. Can you hear me? All right. Spotlights me, then remove the other screen.
Spotlights.
But when you come on board, you for add pip. So that both could do it. It's 6 o'clock, people, and we're live on Tech Connect Voices. My name is Papa Arquez, for those of you who may or may not know me. We're currently streaming on YouTube, and we're also streaming live on Zoom. Kwame Oppong will be joining us very shortly, but before he does, this is the 10th episode, and this is live, and let's do a bit of a recap. We all know Tech Connect. For those of you who are Tech Connect members, and for those of you who are not, Tech Connect is a community that was set up to put together decision makers in tech and to help collaborate and drive tech in the environment in Africa. And we want to make sure that not only are we exploring the issues that are Africa related, but we make sure that we are actually also creating solutions that are Africa focused. As we had our conference not too long ago, a few issues came up, and we came up with a solution that for us to continue the engagement and the Herculean task in front of us, we need to have a series of forums in which we can have dialogues, have conversations, have engagements that ensure that we're making progress by understanding the ecosystem, by understanding what's in front of us, and by putting our resources together to make progress. We identified 32 areas in the tech ecosystem which we need to fully understand and develop, and ensure that these 32 areas span across academia and have discussions for the future of students that are coming on board. We want to ensure that private practice are creating the solutions that are relevant to the community we have, and that we have a good engagement with government, being guided by civil service organizations, civil society organizations as well. And these 32 areas, I mean, currently we're looking at the 33rd area, but for now, these 32 areas span a number of sectors. Now, most of us are more familiar with things like cybersecurity, infrastructure, software as a service, and so forth and so on. But there's a lot more to it. And what we identified that we want to expand or explore is artificial intelligence and machine learning, cloud computing and infrastructure, cybersecurity, Internet of Things, blockchain and distributed ledger technology, big data analytics, 5G and next generation connectivity, augmented reality and virtual reality, quantum computing, edge computing, software development and engineering, digital transformation and enterprise solutions, e-commerce and digital payment systems, fintech, health tech and biotechnology, autonomous vehicles and transportation tech, smart manufacturing and industry 4.0, energy tech and sustainability, human-computer interaction, satellite and space technology, education technology, which is edtech, agriculture technology, which is agri-tech, legal technology, which is legal tech, fashion technology, food technology, real estate technology, which is prop tech, gaming and esports, reg tech, regulatory technology, environmental technology, advanced materials, advanced wireless technologies, and media and entertainment technology. And recently, somebody's advocated that we look at mining technology as well, as there's been so much work done with it. We started a couple of weeks ago, and so far we've engaged with people like Sam Adranyi, on infrastructure, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, cloud, and a number of other things. Very interesting engagement. Then we moved on to talk to Chude from Nigeria. He's the CEO of Venco on prop tech, and it's amazing the crazy things that have been going on in prop tech. And we did another prop tech engagement with Vicky as well, Vicky Sampa in the US. So it's been quite interesting understanding what type of technology, what type of innovations have been done in the area of real estate. We engaged with Blaze on blockchain technology and ledger, which was quite an interesting engagement as well. And if you subscribe to our Texonnect Voices channel, you should have access to these. If you've not, please go and find Texonnect Voices and subscribe. You know, the Texonnect is TEXONNECT, and subscribe. We've also engaged with Kobe Hansen on big data and analytics and the need for sharing proper data. We have engaged with lawyer Ajua, who basically talked about the legal implications of artificial intelligence. Very interesting dialogue as well, right? And then we engaged with Papa CK on, and this was a live session on cybersecurity. Very interesting one. And we're looking at having a few more cybersecurity engagements as well. So there's been a lot of dialogue that's been going on. There's been a lot of very interesting sharings that have been going on, and it's been amazing. We're looking at engaging some other people on IoT and a number of other areas that I mentioned. Now, beyond all this, today we have 2 more episodes to close off season 1. Season 1 is 10 episodes. And we've already engaged in the area of health tech or med tech, like I like to call it, with Dr. Ahene Asante, who has given us some good insights into the new trends in medical technology, what kind of policies we need to place. Pretty exciting to engage on that. This really went in like geek level, really cool stuff, talking about gaming, the transformation from gaming, the games that they've built as Letias as a company, the fun moving through the history of computing and how far it's come. And it's been quite insightful. What makes Texonnect even more exciting is the questions that come in from you, the viewers, and the follow-ups and the possibilities. Some of you may not be aware, yesterday we had a special Texonnect night at Movies in the Park. So a collaboration with Paige. We basically wanted to explore the area of AI. So we watched the movie I, Robot, and the reality, is it realistic? The things we saw, is AI dangerous? Is AI safe? What are some of the things that we could do to mitigate risks that come with it? And we have different views that were shared. There are those who believe that AI will never become aware enough to take over. There are those who have concerns. There's those who believe that, hey, you know what, they're excited about artificial intelligence and they don't see a world without it. There are those too who believe that, hey, wait a second, the cat is already out of the bag, but if it wasn't, would have rather AI never came out. We also explored a number of scenarios that have been shared, and a couple of videos from some credible sources around the world, some of our celebrities and what they've done. An example is one video where Elon Musk was saying, you know what, AI is more dangerous than a nuclear weapon, and so there should be a lot more responsibility dealing with it. Somebody else too said, you know what, they wish government would regulate more. Now, in this part of the world, it's up to you to decide if you think our government has the capacity to regulate at the rate at which IT is moving, or do we all have to play our part in supporting government to regulate, being the eyes and ears of them and bringing the technology, the expertise, and the intellect together to make sure that we have the good guys doing well and the bad guys being kept in check. So this is what Texonnect is all about, having that community that brings all these resources to make sure that things move the way that they should move. And that's why we're bringing on board today, like I said this evening, we're we're going to be connecting on Kwame Oppong soon. Now, for those of you who may not know Kwame Oppong, you may have heard about the 3 Africa Summit. He was very integral in this particular conference, and I dare say it's probably the most successful conference this year, if not in a long time. So they had over 8,000 people, registered to come. A lot of people are Accra International Conference Center on all the days. So much dialogue, so many engagements. A lot of experts flying in from different parts of the world to come and connect, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. We even have an ambassadorial group where we connect, we dialogue, we engage. So this engagement we're going to be having, for a number of reasons. Besides that, he's also wearing multiple hats, just like Dr. Ahene that we spoke to earlier. Dr. Ahene, we know, is a wealth of knowledge and has shared some really pretty cool stuff. But Kwame Oppong wears the hat of a regulator, and he's also an innovator. And that it's like the yin and yang. Those two sides fighting against each other for a balance makes it beautiful. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. And at Texonnect, we try to get you whatever you need to make sure that you have the right information, no fluff. So here are some questions that I'm thinking about asking Kwame. And of course, you viewers, if you feel that it's not capturing everything you want, you can make suggestions as well. You can share some of the questions that you'd like to get answered, and I'll make sure that those questions are answered. So we want to understand, basically, because we don't expect that everybody's a guru in fintech. So if you're not a guru in fintech, what is fintech, and why has it become such a game changer for economies like Ghana and across Africa? And Kwame is the best person to answer that. He's been at the forefront of fintech regulation and innovation. Why does he believe fintech is so vital for Ghana in Africa at this point in time? What role has fintech played in improving financial inclusion, especially for the unbanked and underserved populations? And can he give any tangible examples? Now, I don't know what your views are. Do you think people need to bank? Do you think, we still have some glitches and so people need to keep money on their mattress? I don't know what you think, but I'd like to know what Kwame's thought. Has seen a surge in mobile money and digital payments. What makes Ghana's fintech ecosystem particularly dynamic compared to other African countries? Mind you, M-Pesa was a global standard for a while till the rest of us come on. But I think Ghana's chopped some awards. What does it mean to special? Maybe you can tell us. Now let's talk fintech innovations that have emerged in Ghana and Africa in the past decade. How have technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, and digital banking transformed financial systems on the continent? Do you think fintech has the potential to solve some of Africa's most pressing socioeconomic issues, such as unemployment, poverty, and financial illiteracy? And how, right? As a regulator, how does he balance encouraging fintech innovation while ensuring consumers protection and financial stability? And I think this is our $1 million question that we want to know, and why, and what makes Kwame the guy that we want to talk to today, right? What are some of the common misconceptions people have about fintech regulation? Do they just think of them as the bad guys, or do they see them as necessary? I mean, I'd like to know his thoughts on what he thinks they think, right? And we definitely want to hear from you viewers as well as to what you think. Please put in the chat page, or give us comments. So he's a big concern. How do we ensure fintech platforms remain safe and secure for the public? Okay. What are some of the biggest challenges fintech regulators face in Ghana and Africa, and how are we tackling them? Trust is key to fintech adoption. What steps are being taken to build public confidence in fintech platforms? How can fintech startups and innovators ensure that their solutions remain compliant with regulations operations without stifling creativity. Fraud and scams remain issues of concern. We should protect consumers and keep fintech systems secure. What are some emerging trends in fintech that excite him, Kwame, both locally and globally? Keeping up. We also have some polls that would like you to answer. So if you don't mind, please answer the polls. Would like to hear your thoughts on it. Kwame should be joining us very shortly, but let's hear your thoughts. If you have any, please put in the chat page. Whoever has joined us iPhone, can you please rename your device so we can address you properly? Ikea just joined. Awesome. Hello, Ikea. Good to see you. Ikea is the CEO of Sambus Geospatial. They're doing some really amazing things. Ikea, do you mind introducing yourself? I don't think a lot of the tech connectors have met you yet.
Hi, Papa. Good afternoon
Yes.
from here. Forgive me, I have a very bad cold. My name is Ekria Abua from
Good.
Sambas Geospatial. I can't show my video now because I'm stuck somewhere in the snow, but but it's a pleasure to be here to meet everybody. And thank you, Papa, for the opportunity. Merry Christmas to everyone.
No. Oh my goodness. Amazing. Merry Christmas. Ikea, very quickly, what is your interest in fintech? Because I know you're more into GIS and geospatial stuff, the kind of things that land economists and people who deal with land and the real estate people are excited about.
In fact, everybody's excited about GIS because it's, of course, data analytics. But what is intriguing for me in fintech is to understand where it's going towards and how it would affect us. Because, of course, tech affects one tech area affects one tech area one way or the other. So it's good just to understand what's happening there and how, with AI in the boat, how it's influencing things, shaping things. We all, by the way, use a lot of the fintech apps. So it'd be good to understand and know how they are handling, because I am here sitting here wondering, looking at the impact of AI on my business. So definitely I want to understand how it works with fintech and how we can position ourselves as in, if anything, as customers, as fellow tech people, however you position us. Thanks, Papa.
It's too bad you were not at the movie engagement yesterday, because it was interesting talking about AI and how it affects different people, and would have liked to hear your thoughts on it. It would also be very interesting to find out what fintech tools that you're using and whether you're happy with them or not. Kwame is supposed to be joining now. I'm not sure if he's having any technical challenges. We find out if we have any questions on the chat page. Or our YouTube where we're streaming. For the tech connectors too, if you're not able to put your questions, also put your questions on the Tech Connect WhatsApp group, and I'll be sure to check that as well and make sure that your questions are answered. All right, I believe we have Kwame here. So let's get right to business. Kwame, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Hello, everyone, and good evening, and happy
Your
holidays.
audience have been patiently waiting.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it, everyone.
Good evening and happy holidays. So we have some people following on YouTube, and we have very few people here. And Kwame, a question that has come up, or should I say, one of the curious areas is somebody says she wants to understand clearly how fintech affects her business. Wherever we go, we probably want to do that. So let's start from the basics, Kwame. Become a game changer for economies. Pen you, Kwame, so that everybody can see you clearly.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Let's just replace pen. Replace pen. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is fintech like Ghana and across Africa?
Great. So let me first of all say, great conversation. But fintech is basically a broad terminology. And if you would consider, for instance, what we do at Bank of Ghana, we only touch a subset of fintech, if I should say. The reason being, fintech itself is the broad terminology used to describe that intersection of financial service and technology. Effectively, whether it's insurance, pensions, savings, investments, anything in the financial sector that is today provided as a financial service, when you add technology to it, that is what fintech is. So from a Bank of Ghana perspective, where I work, and of course I'm doing this as a Texonnect member, which I'm a proud member of, fintech really, from our perspective, is that broad ecosystem. But what we do as a fintech innovation function in Bank of Ghana is look at the sector that we supervise when it comes to banking, payments, and all the other elements within the central bank's ambit. This is what our involvement entails.
Great. Now, you've been at the forefront of fintech regulation and innovation for a while. Can you share what inspired you to take such a strong interest in this space? And we're getting personal here.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. Perhaps it goes back to my career journey and interests, right? So, I started out as a big believer in, and I still am, by the way, in rural banking and the potential impacts that rural banking and microfinance can have in transforming societies, particularly for MSMEs. And I was just having this conversation this afternoon about the key role that MSME focused policies can play across emerging markets and developing economies to transform those societies. The reason why during COVID, cities like New York and the rest survived and were resilient is because they have a strong SME ecosystem out there. And even if you look at many large economies, in spite of the large institutions they have, MSMEs play a big role there. So my interest came from the role that finance plays in there. And increasingly, I realized that whether it was the financial service element or whether it was the industry that it looked to impact, technology was a key ingredient in bringing a certain impact, right? Enabling it in a way that it couldn't ordinarily. And so this is where the journey begins. And eventually, I went through a journey of going into, insurance and house and finance at the more industrial level and at a state government level, but also from there moved into technology a bit more mainstream. So I'm not sure many people realize, but I actually spent the bulk of my early career building solutions for many of the global 1000 and Fortune 100 companies. So in fact, I touched a lot of the Fortune 500 companies in that span of my career, from you know communication, media, and entertainment, financial services, state, local government, education, but a wide variation of institutions, including even defense contractors and some interesting projects there. But for me, the one big thing was we were always, let's say, advocating technology in an environment where it was not yet understood. And so I remember today, and I'm on LinkedIn and following people, and I'm seeing some folks who perhaps 15 years ago, I would say, would would look at me odd when I said, you could virtualize your database, for instance. These were the early days of the VMware virtualization, the Hyper-Vs from Microsoft, and all the other alternatives, which eventually went from automation, virtualization, into the cloud. So wound up becoming a cloud expert, but focusing more on data centers. And found something quite fascinating when I got into mobility at the time, the idea of working from anywhere, not in a restricted manner, but unbound by the restrictions of working outside your corporate environment, was very fascinating to me. And the enablement of that was even more fascinating. But around the same time, mobile money was also, had taken off in Kenya, and Ghana had begun experimenting with it. Mobile money's journey in Ghana is a fascinating story. I encourage many people, who haven't really read about it or heard about it, to go and look into it. But effectively, that's one of the interesting things that piqued my interest, and I decided to explore the idea of mobile money. Now, that journey itself was loaded with experiences, because many Ghanaians may recall that, and unless you're Gen Z or a bit younger, but Ghanaians didn't want to touch mobile money. And at the time, I remember being a general manager of one of the companies, and it felt even like we didn't have competition. It was a solidarity cause among service providers trying to make this work. We strongly believed in it, but I think that belief was not clear to the majority of Ghanaians at the time. And there was legitimately a product user fit problem that we're dealing with. But through that journey, harkening back to my experience in the housing inclusion and financial service as a leverage or a tool to create access to housing, that background of policy and impact, I had taken a keen interest in the policies around digital financial services. And so subsequent to the market turning a corner in Ghana and working with the central bank in Ghana to what we call what was published as the electronic money issuer guidelines and the agent guidelines, being strong advocates for things like interest payments, which people receive today, probably more than I do, advocating for things like tiered KYC, which did not exist, advocating for things like even direct engagement with the central banks. And I think folks like Elihene, Edmond Bewa, Kalashi and Co. And the names can go on, Salamadadivo. All of them can actually attest to these very difficult days. But one thing I could say is there was an admirable leadership from the central bank's perspective, taking that very uncomfortable step to say, let's look at this again and see if we can make it work. And that in itself inspired both my interest, but also inspired many of the changes that we've seen in the markets today. So that's how I came to this. That's a not so short description of how I came to this interest of fintech and the policy dimension as well.
Wow, very interesting and very thorough background, or CV, let's just say very impressive background. Kwame, because it's easy for people to put that you're the real tech McCoy. I mean, the finance thing just came alongside. So really good stuff. Awesome. Now, why do you believe that fintech is so vital for Ghana and Africa at this particular point in time?
Okay. So, I think at the time we thought of it as digital financial services, right? And the truth is, if we are to follow the existing models, we're not going anywhere. Let's face it, as a society. And so it's important for us to really look, and I think, again, the formulation of the EMI guideline is a classic linchpin for this and the pivotal point. And this actually goes back to the 2000s, where governors like Paul Akwa had looked at the idea of a retail payment ecosystem that needed to be enabled by a national switch that existed for public good and efficiency. And so you saw almost a deliberate effort to pivot and enable what we have today as fintech. But if you even disaggregate that a bit, you're going to see various milestones at which the things that happen have created what we have today. Fintech and perhaps digital financial service as an ecosystem, and maybe I'll speak more broadly from that, has the ability not just to foster inclusion, which now the evidence exists for everyone to see. You've seen the Findex surveys go from, 20 something percent, then to the 40, 42s, then to 58. And now, we have the FII, the FinMark study, basically putting us about 90%. But it's not just about getting access to financial services. The whole idea of inclusion is this is a workaround to enable that people get access to financial services. They get access not just in name only, but to a variety of services that intervene in their needs. So, yes, I have a bank account, but can I get a loan? Yes, I have a bank account, but is it helping me access things like insurance, right? I have a bank account, but is it giving me, as a farmer, are there products that are built to help me? Or as an MSME, are there products that are built with me in mind? That's that depth that we need. And then perhaps finally is the fact that there's also the need for informed usage, which I should mention. It is not enough for people to have access to financial services or be able to have access to a variety of it. But if people are not clear on the implications of some of these products and services, you have challenges like you saw in Kenya, where with the great success that we saw, there was an unfortunate underbelly where young men and women, but mostly it was young men from what the data suggests, would borrow, which was a great opportunity for them to go into some small economic engagement, but they would borrow and bet. And once you bet, I mean, let's face it, gambling and gaming has not always been in favor of the gamer or the gambler. Often they lose out. And when they lose out, what happens? Their names are recorded on the registry, right? So the credit reference bureaus register their name, and now they don't get access to credit again. So that the financial service itself does not wind up creating a burden was a very important thing. But from a healthy and a financial health perspective, this is one of the things fintechs can do. Give people access, give them deeper access, and also help with informed usage. In addition to that is the issue of employment. It's amazing. Besides, I used to think in my early days in mobile money, some of the guys who started out have done such a great job. Now they are big companies hiring hundreds of, over 100 people, engineers from all walks of life, and actually starting to recruit engineers who are coming back home after working abroad. They are hiring accountants, lawyers, human resource specialists, all kinds of people. This is an employment opportunity. Then the issue of investment as well. One of the things that we're trying to do, and you saw this with 3i Summit, was to find a way of showcasing Ghana in a way that the investment community out there saw it as a legitimate destination for investment. At the same time, there's also the convenience that fintech is giving us. Now, how many of us actually buy scratch cards? Even the telcos have stopped providing scratch cards. How many of us walk out to go and pay for certain utilities? Now you can pay for DSTV, water, even like ECG, you can pay for that remotely. So those are the kind of conveniences as well. But for us as a central bank, the improvement in the monetary policy transmission is a very important aspect as well. Look at all that cash that had existed outside of the banking system. And now, with all the emerging payment services that are, operating in the market, you have options as a consumer. And those options are making sure that people have no reason to keep money in cash. That's the idea. And we can scale that even more. So, employment, investment, income, the fintechs pay great income, and their policy transmission aspect as well, which is good from our central banking perspective, are all things in addition to financial inclusion that motivate us for what we've been trying to do.
Thank you, Kwame. Cash does feel good in the hand, though, but we'll see about how soon we will totally get a move to digital when it comes to cash. But Kwame, quick one. Ghana has done, obviously, and from what you're saying as well, encouraging that we read the history, chalked a lot of success in mobile money and digital payments and seen a lot of surge. What makes Ghana's fintech ecosystem particularly dynamic compared to other African countries?
So this is one of the key things we focus on as a central bank. And I think from a broader national policy perspective, it's something we have to pay attention to. Because the central bank will do its part, so will the other regulators who now have encouragingly shown an interest in leaning in when it comes to the issue of fintech. But as we continue to evolve the sector, whereas we have made some progress, it is important that we make even more progress because there's a lot more opportunity. We haven't even scratched the surface when it comes to the opportunity that fintech provides. And that's very important. Nonetheless, there are things we have to look at. So there are many countries that are benchmarking Ghana today. And for that reason, as peer central banks, for instance, we provide the support that we can to make sure that they're also coming along. Because there's something that we have to be clear about. We are only 30 million people, about 33 million. We need a broader African market for our fintechs to grow and scale in. While we continue and our fintechs work incredibly hard and creatively, and government has to continue to find ways of leveraging and using and putting our local fintechs to work in every aspect of our social and economic lives, and that goes to the broader tech community, not just fintechs. It is important that we also recognize that there are other markets that are doing even better, and we should be able to benchmark them. When you look at a market like South Africa, it's not a market that, for instance, has been successful with mobile money, even though an MTN comes from there. It has not been successful with mobile money, but they've been successful with the banking side and a couple of things, right? Then you look at markets like Mauritius. They have been great with positioning themselves as that hub where people go to register companies. It's an offshore haven to a large extent. It has its own implications, but at least they are driving and playing to that strength. Then you also have markets like Nigeria and Egypt, which have very large populations, particularly Nigeria, very large populations, and they also have a strong ecosystem of local investors who invest in these businesses. And that's very important. Those are things that we have to look at and understand the dynamics. And those are things we benchmark. Of course, I should also be clear. It's not everything you want to copy because there are things that perhaps if you look at your context, you have to be careful about. But one of the key markets that we've benchmarked very clearly is Singapore. Their population is not very large, but they decided to call themselves a fintech nation. There's a book from 2016 somewhere that they published and called themselves a fintech nation. It is not a joke. They are very serious about this. There's a reason why Bank of Ghana went into an MOU with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and we've gone ahead to do so many interesting developments within the space, which for us as central banks would not have been very ordinary, right? Things like tokenizing cross-border payments using our central bank digital currency and using a stable coin from Singapore. Things like the Universal Trusted Credential, which is built on an Ethereum ERC20 standard. That is something we did a while ago. It's now been adopted by the UNDP and is going to go into other markets, I hear Cambodia and a few other places. We built a financial trust corridor to test borderless trade and financing support for MSMEs. And that financial trust corridor was a standardization of the compliance requirements across both countries. Those are all things we do with them, and we learn from them, even in things like blockchain and digital assets. We learn from them in the possibility that you can still be a relatively smaller market, but be able to command a lot. Because if you look at many of the biggest fintechs in the world, they all come to Singapore. At least the one conference they have, the Singapore FinTech Festival, is now the biggest financial sector gathering in the world. 63,000 people showing up in that small city. That's quite impressive. And so that for me is one of our benchmark countries. And I think we should continue to explore and exploit that relationship because it's mutually beneficial. And so that's really how I see the whole ecosystem and how we are trying to pick and choose what may work for Ghana within the African context, but also learn internationally as well. And of course, you have the usual UK, the EU zones, the US, all being markets that we keep a close eye on and we try to learn from.
So talking about mutually beneficial relationships, there's a question I have here from Vicky Sampa, who's a prop tech expert, and she was asking what collaborative efforts fintech is making with other tech ecosystems, specifically prop tech.
So just let me just say, since this is Texonnect, I can speak openly as a person. So I follow Vicky's work on prop tech. Unfortunately, the rest of my family ecosystem is not in this sector. It's just my brother and everybody else is more on the real estate side. But it's so interesting. I've always been wondering, is anybody going to do anything over there? Because there's so much opportunity. There's so much opportunity to structure things. Blockchain can have an impressive impact over there. But my mandate is somewhat restricted. And so if you don't bring something to us, we have it's a bit tricky. So I'll put it this way. If a prop tech solution says we want to leverage fintech to address the payment aspect of what we do, absolutely we're happy to support. And there are some very interesting things that we have learned recently, especially even in the creative arts industry. So it's about, for us, because we regulate only the payment aspect, and perhaps the credits aspect as well when it comes to other sides, not a fintech office per se, but a central bank itself. There are other areas that perhaps there's room for that collaboration. Under that kind of ambit and umbrella, we can support and see what's happening and how we can add value. But often, because we're regulators as well, we have to wait sometimes for things to come to us. Because prop tech is one of those areas that is it's quite fascinating. And I hope we see something from Vicky soon. And frankly, on the innovation side, if anything came that required our support, would love to have it in the sandbox and see how it works. That's the whole idea of having a sandbox. And by the way, I should mention that the current UK government, as part of their manifesto, mentioned that they wanted to have a sandbox like Ghana's in their manifesto before coming into office, which we found quite encouraging. They mentioned Ghana, India, and the UAE. So would love to see it if there's a link there for pros. Currently, there are a couple of entities in the sandbox. Some in agriculture. I think one of them is in education, and they are solving such a problem that all these years we've sort of ignored. And I really hope they come out of this successful so that they can go out there and scale. I think everyone is cheering for them based on what kind of use case they've identified. So would love to see that as well someday, Vicky.
Awesome, great. So, Kwame, give me two of the most impressive or significant fintech innovations you've seen this year in Ghana and Africa.
Wow. Okay. That is a very difficult
Did you get
choice.
that?
Yes. So two of the most impressive
Hello?
fintech innovations in Ghana and in Africa more broadly.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now this would be a difficult one to choose because I've seen quite a lot of innovations. I would say in Ghana, and probably I can't even openly acknowledge it because of my other hats that I wear, but I'm sure they know themselves. There, one young guy showed up in my office. And by the way, just so you know, if you want to meet with us, I know typically the sentiment about public institutions and everything, just go on our website, fintech at BOG, look for innovation, slash innovation, fintech innovation. Sorry, bog.gov.gh, then go to fintech and innovation and book a virtual meeting with us. Whether you're looking for a license or you have questions, whatever it is, just come. There's an open door policy. Literally give it a try. Don't listen to anyone. You know, just do this for yourself, right? But I sat through an innovation, and the only thing I can think of was, wow, if this thing could go, if this thing could go mainstream yesterday, that would be fascinating. And without sharing much, and this is such a to share much of it, I have to perhaps hint at a little things that may make people get a sense of it. It's a credit product. What is new about credit? We have digital credit; it's been successful, but this credit product is tailored at a certain group in our society who are notorious for end of year reliability issues, right? Those service providers who people are posting memes about their disappointments, they are an incredible part of our end of year festivities and enablers as such. But I tell you, someone has an innovation in the sandbox now targeted at them, and we're all waiting to see how it pans out. Because the model that is being run, and I should highlight, innovation is not only in the tech, it's also in the business model. The model that is being looked at is incredible. So that's one. The second thing that I thought was interesting is something that we are actually working on, so perhaps I can talk about it. It's the project Akuna with the Stellar Network. So you may have seen the founder of the Stellar Development Foundation, Denell Dixon, here during the 3i Summit. And you may also have seen in the news the central bank had a meeting with the Stellar Foundation as well as Idris Elba on this project Akuna. During the run up to the 3i African Summit, we met, we thought the creative folk, we don't talk to them as policymakers. Do we even know what's happening there? We got thoroughly educated. And we didn't realize that many of them, and I think KOD in one video was explaining how, on a panel with us, how, I think Sarkodia was also there, how many of them had to sell their albums to international music production companies because they couldn't protect and safeguard their IP around the world. So if their music is being played elsewhere, they're not going to get paid. Do they have the capacity to track and ensure that they are being paid? That's a challenge. And for your catalog to be given away for cents on the dollar in a country like Ghana and Africa, where at least when it comes to the creative industry, there are no regulatory constraints or anything. People can express themselves and they can blow up on the international stage. That deserves some attention. So that's just for music. Then the second part is if you look at something like the lady, the Akwaba picture. Look at that lady. Her picture has been used and replicated so many times. If she was an NFC or an NFC was created on, with her image, can you imagine how wealthy she would be? That tells you something. And so we realized we could play a role in this. So we're actually about to go live in a project in the sandbox again with the Stellar Foundation and a couple of local PSPs to test the idea of using blockchain to protect IP of some of these creative folks, so whether it's artists and musicians and anyone in that industry. So I think you saw on the stage Mr. Easy, Christy Brown, all of them. If we can really help them with protecting their IP and collecting their payment, that's good for us as a country. But the innovation behind it and the apparent readiness of they themselves as an industry. And there was another lady called Juliet, and forgive me, I had no credibility when it comes to the creative arts industry. This was my first time learning about it. We learned a lot from them, and that is what is informing what we're doing, by the way. She broke down the numbers for us on stage, and this is on YouTube as well, so you can actually see it. This was the 3i Roadshow at the Bankers Association of Banks head office, their office building, their premises. And she broke it down for us. And by the time we're done with this whole road shows and going through 3i, we had made good on our commitment to see how we can support it. And that project we've been working closely with them, and we're making significant progress. I'm sure we're going to talk about it sometime soon. These were the two things that really piqued my interest. The last one, perhaps on the African continent, is when I saw, I think it was a Nigerian fintech firm providing a certain service to, I believe it's either Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. I can't remember which one of the US mortgage entity. And for me, that said a lot. We understand the issue of the informal sector and exclusion more than anyone. And so here's a Nigerian fintech managed to, or at least Nigerian owned fintech or owned by Nigerians, that is now set up in the US or has an operation in the US, enabling the ability for financial services in the mortgage area to be extended beyond what it can today. That's the kind of thing that I love to see. So those would be the innovations that I've seen that I'm quite impressed with this year.
Passion as you talk about these innovations.
So, Papa, I think I may have missed you there.
Hello, Kwame. Did you get my question?
No, I missed that. Can you repeat it again?
Okay. So I was talking about your passion around innovation and some of the exciting things you've talked about, and the fact that it almost makes me forget that you're a regulator. And so I was asking that as a regulator, how do you balance encouraging fintech innovation while ensuring consumer protection and financial stability? And especially because I know you have to cut through a lot of red tape, and I know your environment. I mean, what a lot of people don't know is that in the background, there's a lot of stops and hurdles that you have to jump through to even push some of the innovation you've pushed so far. So how do you balance it?
Well, first of all, it feels like split personality sometimes. Look, when it comes to the innovation side, whether you're putting out a sandbox, doing 3i and giving people the opportunity to get partnerships, investments. People meet me at church and they say, I was at a 3i, I found some partnerships in the in the hallway, just networking. They love that. But I'm also a regulator and I can't shirk that responsibility. And it's very important because people do not realize innovation will happen regardless, but it's important that we make sure it is safe. You don't want innovation that goes to cripple the vulnerable in society, innovation that destroys the livelihoods of people. So you saw us come out very aggressively in the instance like the illegal lenders, right? Those illegal loan apps, just abusing people, causing depression, suicidal tendencies, destroying marriages, I mean, the stories were horrid. And as a regulator, you cannot sit and hear that. In fact, not even as a regulator, as an adult and a responsible adult, you cannot hear that and decide to ignore it. And so I keep telling people those two roles are equally important for me. But for all of us as a society, it is important that we ensure both. What we did in the mobile money case, for instance, is not to say don't let people sign up for mobile money because they don't have, the kind of they don't have bank grade KYC. On the other hand, you didn't say leave people to just sign up a mobile money wallet, even if they don't have any KYC. What we did was come up with a tiered KYC system, saying if you have this much or this level of KYC, you can do transactions to this level. If you have that level of KYC, you can do transactions to that level. That is a classic case of balancing the risk and the opportunities. Often, if you have an innovator, and I've been a product manager before, my concern would not immediately be the financial stability implications and the consumer protection, etc., even though it should be, because customer lifetime value is very dependent on user retention, and user retention is directly correlated to the safe usage of the product. But mostly product managers and the commercial guys are looking at how do I get this product out there? How do I sell? That's the charter, and that's understandable. But on the other hand, somebody has to answer the question, my money is going away. Somebody has to answer the question, this misbehavior or market misconduct is destabilizing currency, for instance. Ultimately, that instability on that side will come back and bite us. I think you recall what happened in Nigeria at a certain point, where a lot of the remittances were routed through crypto and blockchain. Now, was the technology good? We've been testing it. We know and understand blockchain, and to a large extent, really love it. But we don't forget the fact that for us to go mainstream with anything, the relevant protections need to be in place. AML concerns. So nobody is laundering money. If we get blacklisted, then what have we achieved, right, as a country? The fintechs are now going to get de-risked. Their partners are going to start being charged a premium for dealing with them. And in the end, we all lose. So let's protect whatever gains we make and make sure we're doing this safely. I remember there was one fintech in Nigeria who wound up having to wind up their company because they went to put all their funding in a crypto platform called FTX. And it was such a sad situation because these guys are working hard.
Tell me why we can't even get PayPal.
What's that? Sorry, can you repeat that?
That came in delay. Ignore it. I was saying that especially when people are losing money, but yeah, that was said before.
So that's one of the things that we are mindful of. So balancing those two, it's a question of one, is there an opportunity here? Does it add value to us socially and economically? What are the inherent risks? Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. Because if you ask anyone in this industry to write a concept note on something, the how it works is the easy part. That's the part that comes naturally to everybody, right? But what is the implication for senior citizens? What is the implication for the youth? What is the implication for the rural dwellers, right? If you look at something like our CBDC, by 2019, we knew how to create the ECD and deploy it. But the bosses in the hierarchy said, no, go back and make sure everyone benefits from it. We want to see the net impact. And so we had to go back and say, okay, if we issue currency today and it benefits even those living in the rural areas, you cannot bring a new kind of currency that excludes them. And so offline must be a critical part, and we have to make sure it works. That's how it works. And it doesn't matter whether it's a central bank doing this. It doesn't matter whether it's a central bank doing it or it's any other institution in the world doing this. Every regulatory body has to ensure safety in product usage, regulating conduct, regulating AML, regulating stability risks, and in some instances as well, regulating or defining safe parameters for consumer protection and governance, that's very important. It's unavoidable. So, wherever and however you're organized as a society, how do you balance these two things? And that's our daily charter.
Nice. You sound like our very own Batman or Bruce Wayne, Kwame Oppong, flyboy by the daytime, being all Mr. Innovator, and then by the night time, he's like Batman, regulating and making sure the bad guys don't go off with our money. So we appreciate that dual personality. I called it the yin and yang before you came. Common misconceptions people have about fintech regulation. A question.
You said the common misconception
Hello?
that people, yes. So the common misconception that people have about fintech regulation.
Yes,
So, one, people
absolutely.
assume, as a fintech and innovation office, people assume we're only a fintech office. In fact, the reason why I always make sure it's fintech and innovation, well, they assume we're only an innovation office, so they're surprised we regulate. So that's one. Two, people, what I've noticed is, for some reason, many people don't come to us directly for information. So I spent a great deal of our first year. We set up in 2020. And as a bold statement, the central bank, and by the way, it was May 4th, nothing to do with any Star Wars or anything. It was just a random timing issue. We set up as a central bank a fintech and innovation office to directly cater to fintech and innovation. So we have some internal work that we do to support our ability to enable the sector, but also we do work to support the ecosystem. So, for instance, people may not realize there's not a single policy we've come out with that does not involve the Ghana Technology Chamber, who represents the licensed payment service providers, and the Electronic Money Issuers Chamber, who represent the mobile money providers. We don't. It doesn't exist. Every time they are involved, they're sitting in our offices, they're with us at conferences and meetings trying to work this through. Second, governance, giving the fintech space a voice at the highest levels. Every year, we have periodic meetings with both the leadership of these chambers and the key representatives. They select random people to come and meet with us. And this meeting is chaired by our first deputy governor, who is our supervising governor. So that's another thing. The third thing is we have a payment system advisory committee where matters about the broader payment system are discussed. And currently, both the chamber CEO and, well, both chamber CEOs are there to advocate their interests, in addition to the Association of Bank CEOs and our consumer protection, as a consumer protection group represented, private sector represented. These are all mechanisms to make sure that the ecosystem is represented well at the highest levels. Then I think there's also this perception that regulators hate crypto. No regulator hates crypto. You'd be surprised. You actually sit with, and we get the opportunity to interact with our counterparts from around the world. And here in Africa, you'd be surprised if you weren't in a certain setting. If you sat with some governors of central banks, they will have a comfortable conversation with you about cryptocurrency to the extent that you may not actually have known they were that deep about it. The real question is, how do you bring this solution, which people forget was created to circumvent central banks? That's where the problem starts, right? It was created to circumvent central bank. So figuring how to accommodate it is not straightforward. It's like kids or, drug dealers building tunnels underneath the earth to circumvent border patrol and law enforcement agencies. It's inherently intended to avoid you. And so when you want to, let's say, use it as a mechanism for transportation, now here you are realizing, oh, perhaps the vehicles we have can't travel down there. Perhaps, you will encounter those things. So given that central banks and regulators have a responsibility before they go out to the public and say, this is safe, use it, they have to be able to assure the public it is indeed safe. And that's why you saw MICA in Europe being a long, hard-fought battle to put together. That's why you saw the US I think the Biden administration at the time put out a directive that says they need an all of government approach to regulating cryptocurrency. It's not enough for financial sector regulators alone. Now, you take a crypto problem. If you and I have a dispute over crypto and we take it to the court, what kind of burden is it you're giving the judge? I mean, you can roll it into society and suddenly realize the implications there. So we have to be able to make sure not only do we have clarity about how it fits into the broader framework, but how others plug into it, law enforcement, the court system, and everyone else. And that is the burden of regulation. And subsequently, when there's implementation, regulating conduct so that, you know, bad characters don't carry such a great innovation, use it as a conduit for funneling money out of your country, and then you wind up being a harbinger for criminals and the rest. You don't want that and get blacklisted. For me, that's the one thing I don't want to see. For us to get blacklisted, because even grey listing is not a joke to come out of. So this is the reason why perhaps people may not realize. And I should mention to the perception of crypto, we actually have put out a draft regulatory framework for cryptocurrency, and there will be some announcements in the coming weeks and months around how we think we want to test some of these on the markets within the sandbox. And we're going to do this very closely with our counterparts at the SEC, because you know the way digital assets are, right? It can be either it can be used for payments, but it could also be sometimes not an asset alone. It's a security. So we just want to make sure we have that coordination at our level, and we can do something where we all see in our collaborative sandbox. And we have a multi-tenant sandbox, so it allows multiple regulators to actually review products in the course of a testing. So those are some of the misconceptions. Have the patience. And perhaps finally, let me add something. And this is not just for Ghana. For those fintechs who work in other countries as well, I beg you, when you go to any regulator in any country and they say, I need X, there's a reason they are asking for that. Please invest the effort to sit with them. Don't go away and create things in your own perspective, because you may believe something should work, but perhaps it may not work based on the constraints they're working with. They work with laws, they work with policies. They don't have, to a large extent, the ability to vary it. That in itself has its own risks, where you can vary things on the fly. It should not be. The rules should be clear, the rules should be followed, and to that end, invest the effort to sit with regulators and understand not what just is written, but what they mean by what is written. It is very important. It's the reason why our license application pack has a glossary of terms. And now there's a concept of data utility. So people can even validate when we say who's an active customer, this is who we mean. Things like that. So those would be some of the misconceptions that I would share with you.
Interesting. Kwame, it feels like we could literally probably do 32 episodes with you just on fintech. The wealth of knowledge, the information, the backgrounds, the areas we need to delve into are deep. But I have one last question for you, and it's a two-part question. The first part of the question is, how do you envision the future of fintech in Ghana and across Africa in the next 5 to 10 years? What milestones do you hope to see? And the second question is, what message would you like to leave with policymakers, fintech innovators, and the general public about the role of fintech in shaping our future?
So, no, thank you for this question. It's something that I ponder on a lot. And first of all, some of the key milestones I want to see. I think in Ghana, at this point, we need some official declaration of some unicorns. That would be interesting. That's an important milestone for me. Secondly, one of the initiatives I'm working on currently is to try to bring other central banks together so we can provide the overarching support for cross-border payments across Africa. I think some of you are familiar with that effort. And it's a conversation that will involve regulators, finance ministries, and innovators as well. Because if we don't lead it as central banks, as I said publicly, it's not going to work. It's going to have so much inefficiencies. Enabling it is not enough. It's going to cost money. So much that at some point it's cost prohibitive. So that's one. The final milestone that I want to see is, yes, One of the other milestones that I suspect we're going to see is I want to see the first Ghanaian fintech that is in at least half and also goes to Americas. I think Adam's line is on. Adam, I think
Just
your
a
mic
moment.
is.
I wonder who's.
I think
Adam,
it's.
can
I
you
see. Adam.
please mute? Hold
Okay,
on.
I think
Let me see if I can mute you.
so. These will be
Okay,
the
he's
key.
muted. Yes, please
Yes,
go over it
so
again.
these will be the key. One, a few declaration and new unicorns being
Okay.
added. I know Ghanaians are very conservative, would rather not have the public pressure, but it's important to celebrate success. Let it be known. That's one. The second one I mentioned will be the issue of the NCB in half the countries, and then, of course, the issue of cross border, because we keep talking about regionalization, continental free trade area. And as I say, when goods go into one direction, payments have to come in the other direction. And so we have to open up the borders for payment. And that's why you've seen us granting approval to test cross border payments. Now, in terms of the advice I have for policymakers and innovators, for policymakers, I would say this: the idea of fintech is not that straightforward unless you're listening to one side of a conversation. When I listen to perhaps myself as an innovator, everything is very straightforward, right? Whether it's digital credit, whether it's crypto, whether it's blockchain. I mean, I create a token, then I leave it to expire because just for testing purposes. People in my office are required to do same, and we go through all these things. So it's very straightforward mentally and conceptually, but it's more nuanced. And if you don't do the hard work of appreciating the nuance, the policy could fail, and it could fail in a spectacular way. That's the big danger. So let's be nuanced and let's have a broad conversation about implications of things. And I'll tell you what, every time I have brought innovators together to write policy, sometimes when it starts, blank slate. When we start bringing up, how do we address this problem? How do we address that problem? The solutions they put together winds up being even stricter than what we would have initially proposed or we had initially proposed. That tells you when you are exposed to the broader information, the realities are different. And let's not be mistaken. As this ecosystem has grown and shows the potential to grow exponentially, it's also going to attract all kinds of characters who may potentially be in for the short term and not with the right intentions, and they will destroy the hard work and long term value that great hardworking innovators will create. So, as I always tell people, one, be bold by design. Two, be purposeful. And three, to thyself be true. These three things I've been reminded of by three strong women who I have come across in my career. They had used it for their status for a very long time, and I can never forget them. It speaks a lot to us at a personal level, but it's also important that we use that to be our North Star in trying to navigate the Ghanaian fintech ecosystem and into the future as we all hope for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kwame, and thank you for your time. This has been truly insightful, and this was an epic finish of season 1 of Texonnect Voices. We'll be starting off again for season 2 sometime in January, so stay posted. And let's share it with all our friends as well. This was a very insightful conversation. I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from it, and I'm sure a lot of people will also appreciate what it feels like to be a regulator, things from the regulator's point of view. And sometimes when the requirements are being a bit difficult, understand that there's a man who has a lot of tech experience and a lot of innovative experience. So he knows what he's talking about. Thank you once again, and Kwame, have an awesome weekend.
Thank you very much, and happy holidays, everyone.
Awesome.